Welcome to Run, Build, Grow, the podcast that laces up its running shoes and dives deep into the heartbeat of the communal spirit of running. I'm your host, Andrew Ware, the Runnin' Rev, and I'm thrilled to take you on this exhilarating journey where we explore stories that go beyond the pavement. In this episode, I am joined by Janelle Branch. Janelle is a member of the race walk community, but she also has a background in track and field, in running, and she currently coaches at Utah with their track and field program as a sprints coach. And again, kind of like last week with Kathy, I love this space where we can dive in with folks who are coaching, especially folks who are coaching and building intentional community through their coaching. It's such an interesting perspective and gives us a real insight into what it looks like to build community. And I love Janelle's perspective as we continue to learn what it means to both be community as runners, but be communities of runners for all runners. And whether you're at the front end of the field or the back end of the field, no matter where you are, what it looks like to build community. And this conversation really gets to the heart of that. So let's dive in and hear from Janelle. All right, welcome in, everybody. I am joined by Janelle Branch. Janelle, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing well. And as we get our time started, this is another really cool interview of getting people from just all over the running world. And, Janelle and I were just kind of talking a little bit of, it's not always the everyday runners. It's not always the runners who are also working or the runners who are just looking for their local 5K, but exploring the bigger nature of communal spirit and what that means. And Janelle is such a great person to come have on. As we get started, we'll hear more about her, but right here from the top, Janelle, what is your community and what makes your community awesome?
I think my community, like we were just talking, kind of is a few different things. I've got a local community here in Salt Lake City, Utah. I coach the sprinters at the University of Utah. So I've got that community. And then I'm also a part of the greater USA track and field community, and specifically the race walk community within that community. So I've got a lot of layers of community going on around me.
So I think for one of the first times in the podcast, I have somebody on the pod who has a world athletics profile. Adam might have. I'll have to go back and check, but no. But yeah, and bringing all of these different aspects of community together is in a lot of ways where we, look, where we do, and what your experiences with that are. So what does it look like as you balance a lot of these different communities? Because you're also going from like really extreme natures. You talk about training sprinters and middle distance folks all the way to race walking, which race walking, for those of you who aren't familiar, like that's like 20K races. And so what's it like sort of balancing this nature of community and, what does that look like for you?
It's a little complicated question, but I think the biggest piece is just kind of the big nature picture of it. Like when I'm coaching and when I'm out there, I'm still part of the team, and just having kind of that team aspect when I'm around our team at Utah. And it's not about if they're running 60 meters or if they're running an 800 or if they're running the marathon. It's not so much about that. It's more every day they're putting themselves out there, trying to get better. We really emphasize a lot of recovery and all of these things. And so then when I'm training, and I train alone most of the time, that just having that community aspect really helps when I go to practice and then I have to go train, hearing that encouragement and everything that I'm kind of pouring into the team, they're pouring that back into me. So having both aspects really, I think, improves. I think it improves both sides. So definitely kind of a give and take from both, which is really nice.
And what's that like for you? You talk about training athletes and being very heavily involved in building community in that respect. And then you talk about, I come over here and I'm participating in my events and I'm training for the most part alone. What's that like for you, where not that it might be that your own accomplishments are kind of off to the side, but there's almost this break. You have all right, my athletes are over on this side and we're working together. We're doing amazing things. And then maybe the things that you're doing, there's support, right? But you're out there doing your, workouts by yourself for the most part, it sounds like. What's that been like for you?
I think first of all, yes, there's definitely a break. But my team actually really supports me too. Like whenever I have anything major, if it's a meet or something, they're always texting me beforehand and wishing me luck, just like I would them. And some of them even give me little pep talks, which is fun. So they definitely pour back into me. So I definitely get that aspect from them, which is great. But then, yeah, when I'm training alone, yes, it's alone. I'm on the roads. I'm alone. I have my headphones in, my music. I'm on my own, but I'm also not ever completely on my own. I mean, I have a coach who gives me the workouts. I actually have two teammates who he also coaches. And so even though we're spread out, they're in Oregon, Washington, and I'm in Salt Lake. We're still connected in that way. And then I even had I had knee surgery a couple of weeks ago, which is a whole different story. But I had my competitors were texting me like hoping that I recover well. So the race walk community itself is also a really tight knit community. Yes, we're small and we compete, and once we step on that track or the road, we're gonna try to get each other every way we can. But as soon as we cross the finish line and it's over, we're always hugging and just saying how great everybody did. And we all usually just go out to eat afterwards. So that's a close knit community too, which definitely between those two extremes and those two different communities, I definitely, when I'm training alone, it makes it a lot less hard. There's definitely days where I'm still just feel alone and feel like I'm not getting anywhere and have to fight through that. But having both of those support groups helps me through those moments.
Well, let's dive into that race community, because I think that's one of the really phenomenal things that I found out about you when when Aaron Kunst recommended you for the podcast. I'm familiar with the race walk community. I will turn it on when the Olympics are on. Maybe most people will do the same, but probably don't get a whole lot between it. First of all, maybe like break down a little bit what is race walking. I think a lot of people just think it's a bunch of people walking really fast, and I think there's a lot to that. But also what is race walking, but also diving deeper into what community looks like for the race walk community. You kind of gave us a little bit of a teaser. But what else does that look like?
Okay. So first, what is race walk? So technically the difference between running and race walking is that you have to have one foot on the ground at all times, and your knee has to be straight when it contacts the ground. So there's rules, and then there's judges, and the judges are watching throughout the course. And that's why it's not usually contested on like a road course, like a half marathon or a marathon would be, even though we're doing close to the distances. And actually World Athletics just announced that we'll switch to the half marathon and the marathon starting in 2026. So this is the last year of the 20K and 35K. And that relay that we had last year, if anybody was paying attention. So those are all going away. It's going to be the marathon and half marathon, which is actually pretty exciting. But generally, we're on a closed course because there's judges throughout the course that are trained and certified. They have their own very lengthy certification process through World Athletics to be able to be officials for the race walks at that high level. So that's kind of like the race structure. And that's why when you see it at the Olympics, it's a looped course instead of a marathon course. The race walk community in America, like I was saying, we support each other. Some of the women that I've been racing against since college, I started race walking in college, actually, and then I took a while off, and then I came back to it when I was in grad school back in 2019, 2020-ish. But through that, some of the women that I've been racing for a decade, we're out there going to the same races throughout the country. We end up getting pretty close, and some of them I consider my really good, if not some of my best friends. But yeah, like I said, once we get on that track, once we're competing against each other, it's go time. Actually, one of my good friends, her name's Miranda. She's one of our top race walkers. She usually beats me. No, she always beats me. I've never beat her. But we were going into indoor nationals, USATF indoor nationals last year, and I gave her a hug. And then I said, "You're going down." And she's like, "What the heck?" you can't just trash talk me right before the race. She beat me, so I didn't take her down, but I got second behind her. So that kind of friendly camaraderie that's there, but it's just a really supportive community. We definitely look out for each other and help each other out when we can.
And I think that's one of the things that, you often see when it comes to talking about, especially the higher level professional, world athletics competitions, is what that community is like for those of you who are traveling all around, doing all of these races, getting out there. And, you talk a little bit about, this friend, that friend, these folks. What's life like outside of that sport for you all? What does it look like? Is there a community beyond that race walking mentality, or are y'all just seeing each other at races?
No, I mean, it's a little hard. It's not like we can just go grab coffee whenever we want or something. We're spread throughout the country. Some people are out on the East Coast. It seems like East Coast, West Coast, Midwest is kind of where the hubs are. So I'm definitely kind of alone in Utah because I don't fit any of those categories. But yeah, I mean, I called up Miranda just last week. I called her because we just needed to talk about some stuff. It was a little bit race walk related, and then we ended up talking for a long time about just life and catching up. So those pieces are definitely there.
I mean, I think that there's always something to sort of that shared journey. Like, even if you're not doing the exact same workouts on the exact same days, you're all training for this same event. And, I often think one of the reasons that running communities, the run clubs that have kind of popped up all over the country, I think that there's a lot of those folks, who they're a part of a shared journey. And so even when it's not the run, like even when I'm not running miles or, others aren't running miles, what are we doing together? And yeah, it might be, getting together at the coffee shop at the brewery. But I even think of, just the times where some of my friends have like just sent me a message and like checked in, or, we've been doing, something, and, you give them a phone call or something like that. So I think that's something when we look at a lot of these different communities and how we're, piecing ourselves together, how we're coming together, what it's like. And I think especially as we talk about, stepping up on starting lines and what that means for some folks who the starting lines mean a lot. And you might be surrounded by friends who might beat you, or you might have some friendly competition, and getting the most out of that and what that looks like for you. You know, for that community in race walking nationally, internationally, y'all kind of have this shared journey. And I wonder how much that impacts how you look at things like Olympic trials or world qualifiers, especially from a national standpoint where there might be, I mean, I don't know how many, women are going after it at the top, but, there might be, 10, 15, 20, whatever women trying to go after these 3 spots. At the end of the day, what are you taking away from that communally as like a bunch of, badass women doing amazing things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, I've never personally been in really the position to make an Olympic or world team. I'm kind of like the 5th, 6th, 7th, kind of that almost there, not quite. But I mean, even just I made the world race walking team last year in Turkey. And I remember that race, a lot of people had already made the team because we had a qualifier in January for a different event that was happening also at the same meet, basically. And so there weren't as many of us quite going for that 20K. So I remember lining up, and some of the people that had already made it, the ones that generally beat me, like I said, Miranda usually beats me, always beats me. Why am I saying usually? Some people that are always there and always ready to go, they were definitely like reaching out and just saying good luck. And then quite a few of them, it was in San Diego and they're based out of there. So they were actually at the race and able to cheer us on and help not just me, but it was kind of everybody in the race. And then next month, I'm in an interesting position right now where I've, like I said, had knee surgery a month ago, 5 weeks ago. So I'm not quite ready to train and compete yet. So I'm going out to San Diego just for the day to watch. They have qualifiers for world champs and for our Pan Am Race Walk Cup for the 35K. So I would never do a 35K because I don't like that kind of distance. But B, it's nice just to be able to go and cheer. And I definitely want my friends to make it, but I'll cheer for everybody who's in the race, the men and the women. And I just want to have us have the best Team USA that we can. So supporting them just by being there for just the race and encouraging them the way that they've poured into me in the past too. So.
Yeah. And then you kind of take all of this, national experience as someone competing for race walking, which for listeners is dually a part of the USATF sort of umbrella and World Athletics umbrella, which kind of leads to that next little bit of, you kind of have this other side hustle. No, you also have this other part about you where you're actively involved in the USATF community by nature of being a track coach of sprints. So like race walker to sprinter. I really, that's one that I'm going to need you to connect the dots for me on. But being a track coach and then also, being a part of the USATF community more broadly. What got you into these spaces? Like I said, help me connect these dots from competitive race walker to sprints coach and to being where you are within USATF as well.
I need to connect the dots for myself a little bit on that. I actually, I'm not sure. When I graduated college, I was over track. I competed for 1 year after, and then I was just moving on with my life. It wasn't anything bad. It wasn't even real burnout. It was just, I moved on. I actually joined the Navy for 4 years, got out of the Navy, and then I was in grad school, and I kind of started thinking, before I even knew I was going to grad school, I kind of wanted to get into coaching high school cross country because I wanted something just kind of like to buffer between the Navy and like the rest of my life, basically. And my husband was stationed in Georgia at the time. So got a job coaching there, cross country, high school. Loved it so much more than I thought I would. When I went into it, it was definitely going to be something I did for a year or two while I was doing grad school and then move on. But kind of decided that was my passion. I loved seeing the high schoolers that I was coaching succeed and going to the state meet and all of these things. It was really exciting and fun. And then COVID happened. So then I ended up just kind of sitting there thinking, all right, whichever I get first. And we had moved to DC right into COVID. So it was basically shut down for a year. I didn't really do much. And then I was thinking, all right, I'll either coach or use my degree, which is public administration, whichever one opens up first, and ended up coaching at a small school in Iowa, college cross country. Again, cross country coach. That's what I got my USATF level 2 in endurance. Like everything was going well for cross country. Loved it. And then my husband got out of the military, and we decided to move to Salt Lake City. And at the time, as a pure distance, I didn't know. I've never thought about sprinters. I was trying to find a job kind of coaching distance out here. But there was nothing except a volunteer assistant coach at Utah doing sprints. And so I wrote to the person I was hiring and I said, hey, so I'm definitely not a sprinter, but look, I have this experience and I'm willing to learn. And that's what she wanted, was somebody willing to learn and willing to just do what needed to be done. And showed up to practice day one and she says, go set up the wickets. And I'm like, yeah, right. I just need to know what a wicket is. So anybody listening that's a sprinter is going to laugh because I really didn't even know. So definitely that's kind of how I got into sprinting. I spent the first year just learning, or actually that's not true. I've spent every day since then learning more about sprints and getting more knowledgeable about the science and the art of coaching sprinters and just how different it is compared to distance, and definitely finding the niche in the middle distances, to the point where we were at a meet last week and the 3K was going off, and I said to my coworker, I said, distance running looks weird now. She started laughing because I've just been focused on sprinters for so long. So definitely a little bit of a switch career-wise, but I love it. So that's how I got into sprinting. And then the journey into USATF was basically just I was put on the athlete commission just in general for placing well at US Nationals. And then this past year at the annual meeting, I ended up running for secretary. I got nominated and then ran for secretary of the Athletes Commission, which is a major group within USATF and actually within the USOPC of the athlete voice, and making sure that the athlete voice is heard in all decisions, from things that you don't even think affect the athletes, like coaching ed and officials and things like this. Just making sure that the athlete voice is heard, and it's at least 33% of the vote in all things voted on. So now I'm stepping into kind of an officer position within there, which is exciting. We start next week, the end of this week. We have our first meeting. So definitely just getting my toes wet in that, but looking forward to that journey as well. And basically everything's pointing to medals in LA 2028.
Yeah. I mean, I think United States track and field is in a really good place right now. As I was mentioning to Janelle, and as this episode's coming out, last week I will have released the episode with Kathy Butler, who does a lot of coaching education too. And I think that there's a lot in this space that we can learn from coaches in general, because y'all are sort of the figureheads of building a community structure, whether it is a track and field team, whether it is a professional running group, like many of those that we have, or whether it's just a coaching service like we have with Jess, who I interviewed, whose episode came out now a couple of weeks ago. But for you as a coach, what does it mean for you to build community with your athletes?
This has actually been something that's always been very important to me. Even when I started coaching my high school team in Georgia, there we had to focus on building a community of respect, and also instilling some athletes came with this and some needed it more instilled in them, just that ethic, like that work ethic, and putting in the work and getting the results and just getting through some things, and the grit and things like that. So we had to focus on that within our community, but also focusing on making sure that we were supporting each other and building that respect into our culture. And then as I've gone through different coaching positions, like in Iowa and then now at Utah, that's been very important to me. And in fact, when I was interviewing for the job at Utah, I asked about the culture, because it was something I didn't want to get into culture, especially when I was learning and knew I was going to be kind of out of my league and over my head with just what I was doing. It was very important to me that a culture was already kind of built. And Rebecca, who's our sprints coach, did already have a really good job of building that culture. And it's one where the team, and it's increased since then, to where the team now is very supportive of each other. We only have women, which does make a difference, but I don't think I think it would be this even if we had the men's team also. Every day, not everybody's going to have a good day every day, but the encouragement is there. It comes from the athletes, not from the coaches. Like, yeah, we're of course encouraging, but the athletes themselves see the benefit of being encouraging. And when you encourage somebody else, and when you are exhausted and struggling and can still cheer for your teammate, that actually helps you have a better workout and your teammate have a better workout, versus the other option is to complain and think that the world is ending and that everything hurts, and that's just going to make it worse. So finding that positivity within the struggle is really something that we emphasize on our team, and it comes from the athletes themselves, not from us. So,
from a coaching perspective, what makes that culture such a vital thing for you all to not? I mean, you talk about getting to Utah and wanting to make sure that culture was there, but also wanting to continue to build it. As a coach, what is so important about that culture?
I think the culture is everything, honestly. I think you asked me from a coaching perspective, but I'm going to answer more from an athlete perspective. If as an athlete, especially a freshman, but anybody, if you come into a team and the culture just isn't there, the team is complaining or negative, or there's just something, even if it's not that extreme, just something off in the culture, you're just not going to perform as well. You're going to feed into what's around you. And as coaches, we're susceptible to that too. When the culture on the team is negative, everybody's complaining, everybody thinks that you don't have that buy-in as a coach, where they don't trust you or they don't believe you or they just question everything too extreme, not just, I think people should question, but when they're extreme with that, that really wears you down as a coach. So it kind of like, you're just not getting from the purely high performance standpoint, you're not going to have the results you do when the whole team is positive and focused, and everybody's trying to get the best out of themselves. And then as a team as a whole, like, it's just, the results just speak for themselves with those two types of teams. And I think it's important to make sure that it's a place where athletes feel comfortable growing and comfortable making some mistakes, but learning from them and able to move on. I think that it's not just a part of coaching, it's kind of everything. The science is there. Across the world, people aren't doing different workouts from each other and getting better results. It's all about how the athletes are responding and how the team and the support system around them are able to support them in their journey.
What sort of things are you doing then? I mean, you talk about it from an athlete's perspective, and I think that's one of a positive thing that you find in coaches sometimes, is being able to, as a coach, look at things from the perspective of the athlete. And as you're coaching these folks, what are some of those culture things that you're instituting, that you're instilling? I mean, what does it look like for you as the coach to be at the forefront of making sure that culture is being built? Obviously, you're not doing it by yourself. You have amazing athletes around you, and you're also kind of the focal point of, keeping the athletes accountable to one another and things like that. So what are you doing as a coach to help to continue that culture, not just to build it, but to ensure that what you have is continued, and, you're turning athletes over in 4-year blocks, 4 or 5 year blocks. And so you want a culture that's going to stick around, past the people who are freshmen now. What are you doing?
A few things. One is, so our head sprints coach, Rebecca, we sit around and talk about what's going on in the team frequently, where, what we're hearing, what we're seeing, what we're observing, what we're learning about something from their past, like things like that. We really are intentional, even as we talk as staff, on how to approach different people. And, I did this and understood this person reacted this way. Maybe we should make sure that we're addressing this issue in this way. So as the leaders on the team, we're being really intentional about each individual athlete and how we respond to kind of make it as good of an experience for them, and also get the best out of them. So it's not just, if I say this person's going to win the world record. Like, that's not what we're looking for. It's more holistically, this is what this person needs from me or from us as coaches. So that's how we need to respond. The other thing that we've been doing, mostly the past 2 years, I've noticed, is with the freshmen. You talk about turning it over in 4-year blocks. Well, last year's freshmen are this year's sophomores. This year's freshmen will be next year's sophomores. So we're really working hard to make sure we get those freshmen on the right track early, making sure that they understand the importance of recovery, and making sure that that's a huge part of our culture. That's something that we talk about all the time, is nutrition and rest and water and electrolyte, like all of these things. And we have nutritionists and sports psych and all these other people that's what they talk about, but that is a big focus. So then we help kind of get the freshmen early and the sophomores, the underclassmen, and make sure they really understand it. Not just, oh yeah, coach, I'll do that, and then go and not do that, but making sure they really understand the importance of taking care of these things, taking care of themselves in the classroom, taking care of each other. We have, so they're often roommates, and making sure that, hey, if your roommate isn't at practice, but you are, there's a problem. Like, where's your roommate? You need to take care of each other. And just making sure they really understand that and aren't just going through having their own experiences, but experiencing the team as a team. And then that helps as they continue to move up into juniors and seniors. They're going to carry that. And then we're going to be working on the freshmen, but they'll also be working with the freshmen. And they can kind of take some of those roles that then we don't need to do that. And every single year, we're not doing as much. It's them kind of making sure to instill these things that help them succeed into the underclassmen. So it's really cool to see the upperclassmen pouring into the young underclassmen as well.
And you're primarily talking from, especially the NCAA perspective, where these are amateur athletes, and they're committed to it. What what of that culture, of that NCAA system, what do you see translating into this everyday runner space? I've talked to several folks who, when we're runners or when we're athletes and we're in school, it's easy, right? We're on a team. We are a part of something. Even track athletes who are competing in individual events, you're still on a team, especially the way it is a lot of times where, cumulative scoring and all this stuff. And so you're part of a team coming into the real world. And now your sense of athleticism really encompasses yourself. And there are spaces that are starting to be built, like you and I talked about, connecting what's happening with USATF, World Athletics, to say like our local run communities. What are some things that you can look at NCAA, and you can look at, say, the local community that's around you in Salt Lake City, maybe, and see, what are some things that we can learn from this system as, everyday runners. I never really know what to call us, but what do you think? What do you think that run club community, the national community of, we're entering local 5Ks or we're trying to go after world majors, what have you? What do you think we can learn from that system?
I think you mentioned that not everybody, but a lot of the people in those general run clubs were at one time high school or college athletes, whether they were football players that discovered running or something like, but even if they weren't, I think it's just the NCAA and USATF and World Athletics and high performance, it's all about performance. And I think it's important to recognize more at the local 5K level that there are definitely people in those clubs that want high performance. They want, maybe they're not going to make an Olympic team, but they can go, they want to get under 3 hours for a marathon or under 4 hours for a marathon or under 5 hours, whatever their goal is. Their goal is to be out there and run and perform well. And I think that's important to recognize that those people exist. And then there's also people who are out because it's a stress relief. It's a time by themselves that they're not with the kids, maybe, or maybe that's not good to say, but time alone or whatever their motivation is doesn't have anything to do with high performance. And I think it's important, if you're that high performing person like I am and like most people that I'm surrounded by, when you attend a 5K or a run club, you can't expect everybody to want that. And I think that's kind of important to differentiate is why people are running. From that group of people who do want to achieve whatever their goal is, I think the biggest thing to take away is at the high level, we highly emphasize recovery and nutrition and all those things like I've already mentioned, and community. Like you can't do this sport at a high level alone. I mean, I do, but I have built-in community too. I'm not out completely on my own trying for my goals. If I didn't have the race walk community, if I didn't have my track community, I would still have, my husband supporting me and I would get friends involved. Like I would build some kind of community to make sure that I was still reaching for those goals, which is where that run club idea comes in. So just being able to support each other when one person is struggling or didn't have the race they want, the other person the other people can come around them and support them and get them through that bump so that it's not discouraging, or it is discouraging, but it's not as discouraging. They can come back from it and do better next time. I think those are really the important things. It's the people who are running at high levels are different, but not that different. The formula is the same. You put in the work, you do all the extra things. Most people in run clubs have been in physical therapy at some point. Do what your physical therapist tells you to, and get all those little things in, and it'll add up to the performance.
And, again, there's always that connection, right? Is just like we talked about with race walking, of that shared journey. You might be doing it faster than me, or you might be doing it faster than me, and there's a lot that I can learn from that, even if my ambitions are not to be fast. I don't know that my hips could hold up to race walking. I think they would absolutely get destroyed if I even had to think about walking a 7-minute mile. I mean, running a 7-minute mile feels like a feat to accomplish sometimes. And I see that, it's one of the reasons that as I was looking at coaching, I looked at the USATF coaching like certifications and stuff like that, and the culture that gets built out of it. And I think that there's something to using to what that model looks like to help us to understand not just the cream of the crop, those who are at the top, those who are competing at the top, even competing at the top in high school or NCAA or professionally. I think that there's a translation that helps, everybody, all levels of the sport be able to see, know, and understand. And I hope I'm not too far off track, because it seems like if I'm connecting the dots right, which if I'm not, please, yell at me and let me know. But, the way that it seems like the way that you coach in wanting to create that culture and wanting to make the athletes not just better runners, but better people, kind of plays into a little bit of this role on the athletes commission that you've taken up and what that has meant for you. And so to kind of, begin to bring this conversation to a close is looking at this work that you're doing with USATF and the drive to, I love you said the athlete's voice, because that's an important thing to listen to in this sport. What becomes the role that you see yourself playing in a lot of this for your athletes at Utah, for your fellow race walk competitors, for those people who will be on the U.S. World Championship team in Tokyo in September, all the way to the 50,000 runners who will be running Boston this year, the 50,000 who will be running Chicago, for me, the 20,000 that will be running Shamrock here in Hampton Roads. What is the important part of making sure the athlete's voice is known, understood, heard at all levels of the sport?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing is just to keep, maybe not the biggest thing, but I think an important aspect is to keep talking within our own communities, making sure that, yes, if you're running Boston and there's a major problem that the athletes that are running it the world majors are a corporation, so they want to know if you're not happy with something. So that's a little different. But your local 5K, if you think, hey, I really want to get it, I think this should change. Also, if you think something should change, actually, this is my biggest thing. If you think something should change within your community, and not just even in running, anywhere in life, if you think it should change and you have an idea on how to change it, be prepared to be the one that executes it. And I think that's why I enjoy being in these spaces where I'm able to take action and have a little bit of a bigger voice, because when I see something that needs change or somebody brings it up to me, I'm willing to put in the time, put in the effort to either fix it myself or make sure that people who can fix it are prepared. I support them in their way to do that. So I think that's the biggest thing. Don't complain just to complain. No matter where you are in life, no matter which level of runner you are, if you don't think that your local run club is being run well, talk to the people and see what you can do to facilitate some change. Or you think that you should have more of a book study, be the person that offers, hey, I think we should do this, and I'm willing to do it. Be willing to back up your suggestions. I think that's probably the biggest thing at every single level. And then when you're told no, from whatever reason, maybe go back to the drawing board and refresh your idea, or take it up. Still fight for that. Whatever it is, just don't think that somebody else is going to be there to fix something if you have a problem with it. And on the flip side, if something's going really well, you're enjoying your experience, somebody's doing something amazing for you, thank them. Take the time to just reach out and say, hey, I see this, I appreciate this, find that value in other people. That helps a lot too. So,
and it also, like you said, it feels so simple and yet can always be difficult to have to be the one to highlight things. And I think at least for me, it's encouraging to see that, okay, USATF is willing to kind of look themselves in the mirror and say, hey, these are some things that we need to fix. Now, you and I can probably go at bat for, so long about the things that are wrong with USATF. And that is a different podcast that I do not host.
And I'm not a part of it.
Yeah. And I think it's important for folks like you and others to be on these commissions to help notice things are wrong. And it highlights that important nature of when you see something wrong in the community, that doesn't mean that it has to continue to be wrong. And as we look at how USATF is developing in a lot of these different areas, in ensuring that there's athlete representation, in ensuring that there's quality coaching, and not just quality coaching, but quality coaching that surrounds the major problems that our USATF athletes are facing right now. And as they're doing all of these things, I think it becomes, like you said, like something, hey, if it's at your local 5K and it's run by, some racing organization, don't be afraid to say something. Don't be afraid to be the voice to help get it fixed. And what that looks like for a lot of us, I think, we probably miss that athlete voice sometimes, and we just allow things to continue. So let's hit these end of podcast questions. This has been a great conversation. I mean, this could go on all day. I think it's, there's so much you can hit, and there's so many places you can go. So Janelle, what is I'll say for you, what is your favorite distance to race?
I love the 10K,
okay.
Race walking and running. Race walking, we don't get very many opportunities for it, but even in college, I like running the 10K. I like race walking it. Yeah, definitely just the 10K.
What is your favorite post-run or post-race walk food, snack, meal? What are you grabbing after a workout?
Well, currently I'm cross training, so Sunday I had a 2-hour cross train session, and so I grabbed some mod pizza. I'm usually into Chipotle, but it just didn't sound very good. So mod pizza, anything where it's carbs, cheese, and carbs, dairy, and meat is kind of my go-to.
And then, lastly, Janelle, can you give our listeners a reason to join their local run clubs or run groups?
Yeah, just for that support. Like I've said, just for that community piece, it's so important. It's so hard to do things on your own. Make sure that you're surrounded by community, and find whichever one works for you. Find some kind of community to help support you in your journey.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much for having me.
Always those lessons coming in hot. I love the way that these guests are really helping us to connect that, we can learn from all sorts of different folks, all sorts of different places, all sorts of different people to help us know and understand community better. I love when Janelle talks about what it's like for her as a coach to build that culture, right? It's as much about her work as it is her work influencing the runners that continue to come through. And when I see that in our communities, I think about what it looks like for us. Maybe you're a run club leader and you're trying to build this culture. Maybe you're a run club member and you want to be a part of that culture. Either way, Janelle shows us what it means from both of those perspectives and how important it can be as we look to building community together. Again, not just for the front of the pack. These are not fast runners a lot of times, and fast being a relative term in a lot of ways to what we are doing. Fast is really relative to you. And when we look at a lot of these different groups, a lot of these different people, a lot of these different athletes, we see what we can learn from them. My mind continues to reflect back to my conversation with Tommy Runs, where I said, let these stories inspire you. Don't let them define who you need to be. Let them inspire you to be the best runner you can be. And I think Janelle shows that to us and shows what it means for us to learn from these communities, to see the way that our communities can be stronger together. I want to thank you for hanging out with me here on Run, Build, Grow. If you have a great story, I'd love to hear it. Email me at andrew@runninrev.com and we can get you booked for a podcast recording. And don't forget, connect with me on Instagram, Blue Sky, Strava, Substack. You'll find those links in the show notes. I publish and put content all over those places. If today's episode gave you a spark, Don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, or head over to runbuildgrow.com to catch every podcast. You can go back and listen to the catalog, and even if you subscribe, have future episodes just automatically pop up in your feed. Got an extra minute? Jump on to Apple Podcasts, leave a quick rating or review. If you're on Spotify, drop a rating and a comment on this episode and other episodes you listen to. You know, it's a simple way to help others discover the show and even let me know what's resonating with you. And here's the deal. If you leave a review, I'll give you a shout out right here in the next episode. Want to go the extra mile? Support the podcast and keep it growing strong by heading to buymeacoffee.com/runandrev. Whether it's a one-time tip because you just absolutely enjoyed this episode, or if you want to become a regular supporter and a monthly member supporter of this podcast, every contribution helps this community grow on and off the run. Thanks for being here and for being part of this journey. Until next time, go crush it out there. And as always, make every mile count.